What's up, guys? Welcome back to Rip City Rundown, and I'm continuing this Monday theme that I started last week. We'll do it again this week and probably next week, just the day before the draft lottery. But we're going to be focusing on one single Blazers player and talk about their future with the team, whether they will still be a Blazer next season, and just everything else in between that has to do with that player. Last week was Shaden Sharp. This week we'll be talking about Anfernee Simons, the 23-year-old guard who has played very well for the Blazers over about the last year and a half, since probably the January of 2022 when he took over when Dame got injured last year. But due to the current construction of the roster and the fact that he probably has the best trade value slash tradable contract on the Trailblazers team, he is probably the most likely player on the roster to get traded in any form of a big time blockbuster deal this summer. So let's jump into Simons. Obviously, you guys already know how Simons played last year. He averaged 21 points, 4 assists, about 45% from the field, almost 38% from three, and 89 from the line. So those are pretty good numbers. That slots him in around, I think it was like 40th in the league in scoring, somewhere around there. And he did it on high volume, one of the highest volume three-point shooters in the league. And that's after a campaign when over the entire season he averaged 17, and then when he was starting, he averaged 23. So he's making a solid contract right now, especially with this new CBA coming in soon. That $25 million contract is going to look really good in 1 to 2 years. I remember when we re-signed him for 25 million, people were thinking, "Oh, that's an overpay. That's too much for a guy that's only had half a season under his belt." Well, he proved that he is that caliber of a player, and he also is now looking at a contract that is probably going to be a little undervalued due to the fact that the contracts and the salary is going to be rising here in the near future. So I think at this point, Anfernee Simons' value is starting to be undervalued in a way because I threw out a trade in the Nets Blazers video that we talked about just a couple days ago, and people were saying Anfernee Simons doesn't have as much trade value as he should, um, because he's a bad defender, because his numbers aren't as good as they could be. And to that I say, I think you're wrong. This is really in response to this guy that commented and says Simons is a scorer, and that's about it. Terry Rozier averaged as many points per game as Simons last year. I think Blazer fans are way overvaluing Simons. Not many teams in the NBA need a scoring guard who struggles to pass, dribble, and defend. To answer that, yes, Simon struggles to defend, and that's only something he can get better at. I'm not banking that he will get better, but I have to think he's going to get a little bit better, but I'm not even going to say that's going to happen. But to say he can't pass and dribble is a little, it just proves you're not really watching him. He clearly can dribble the ball fine. His ball handling skills are perfectly fine for a 23-year-old guard. And you have to remember he is 23 and he's playing next to one of the most ball dominant players in the league. And then to say he can't pass is a little, not sure where you're coming from there too, because 4 assists is 4 assists. We'll take that. But in games when he didn't play with Damian Lillard, he averaged 5.7 assists, and that's a pretty good number for a guy that's scoring in games without Damian Lillard, 27.9 points per game, also grabbing 3 rebounds. And those shooting splits in those games are 46 from the field, 41 from three, 94 from the line. So you got to think, if you're trading Anfernee Simons for you're trading for your star and you're trading away Anfernee Simons, you're getting a guy that when he takes over a team, he can average 25. Like I said in that Nets video, I have zero reason to believe, and I would be surprised if Simons didn't average 25 points per game if to say he was traded to the Nets. So, I mean, this is a guy that's only 23 years old and has a one full season of being a real NBA player under his belt. So I think his value is pretty high. High in terms of trade value and higher than people would think. I think a Simons and a lottery pick should be enough to get a guy, and a high lottery pick, a top 5 lottery pick should be enough to get a guy like Mikal Bridges. So the real question is, do the Blazers want to trade Simons? We've seen Joe Cronin in his recent interviews saying that he's comfortable going into next season with Dame and Ant as the backcourt again. And I can't fault him for that because they were a good backcourt together. Now the question is, can you get better positional value if you're trading a guy like Simons? Is Sharp a better fit next to Dame? These are questions you have to ask. And we continue to say this, we can't really throw up real mock trades and stuff like that until we know where our lottery pick is. Because if this pick falls to 7, then I'm not sure Simons in the 7th pick can get a guy like Mikal Bridges. I really don't know what the value of players are out there in the league. But I want to be wary, and I don't want to just jump to the conclusion that Simons needs to be traded this offseason. We have to start sharp because we could then just force ourselves into the same exact situation we had this year, where we start a guy that is coming off a good stretch down to end the year, and we once again are relying too much on two guards. I don't necessarily think that would be the case if we started a guy like Sharp, but I just want to be wary, and I want to be wary of what we have in Simons because he is one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and he is probably the best. I don't want to say best scorer, but one of the best players Dame probably has had next to him in terms of talent. So while I'm open to trading him, I think that we need to just hold the phone and make sure we are getting the best value we can for him. Because at the end of the day, if you still have Simons and Dame on this roster, you're going to be a top 10, probably top 5 offense. And if you could somehow make quality changes around them at the 3 and the 5 specifically, then you could look at a team that's going to be pretty good next year. I mean, we have to remember this team started 10-4. They were at the level of the Lakers, probably a couple of games ahead of the Lakers at the trade deadline, and they decided to blow it up instead of going for it. I think looking back, that's a fine decision because at the end of the day, we're probably not playing in the second round of the playoffs if we didn't blow it up. We're in a better position going into next year. But Anfernee Simons still had a really good year for his first year as a big time starting NBA player, and I still think he has plenty of all-star value. So so my takeaway, or what I think your takeaway should be from this video, is the fact that Anfernee Simons is going to be the guy that is going to garner the most trade talks, and rightfully so, because mainly of that contract. I do think that if I had to put money down, he does get traded this offseason because I do think the Blazers are in a position where they need to make substantial changes. And I think Simons is the best player that you can trade if it's not Sharp. And then just when it comes to money, Simons fits better. But if we do keep a guy like Anfernee Simons, I don't think Blazer fans should be mad necessarily because at the end of the day, this guy is just 23 years old and he's averaging 21 points per game in the NBA on high volume shooting and still above league average 3-point shooting. And then when he gets the team to himself, he is a top 15 scorer in the league. So that's my talk for Anfernee Simons. I think that while we should dangle him, I don't think we should just mark and pin that we're going to trade him. But I do think, given his value, I think his value is high enough around the league to garner a good player. And I think that he has that respect among GMs and coaches and players across the league. So that's my talk about Anfernee Simons. Do you think we should trade Simons? Should we start Sharp? Should we trade Simons for another guard that's a little better at defending, such as a Jaylen Brown? What should we do with Simons? Let me know. I want to hear you guys' thoughts, and we'll catch you guys in the podcast coming out on Wednesday. Peace.